Hey, what's going on? It's the Dharma Guy here, and I'm here with my my trusted companion. I'm gonna call you that from now on, Mr. The Dope Doctor over here. And you're listening to WPSN99.com. This is Dharma Time, and we stream solutions. I aim to provide some sort of a solution today as we get some of these little technical difficulties worked out. It's it's been a week, right? What's up with that? It's been a week since the show's been on, or over a week.
What do you mean about
this is now week
trusted,
2.
Trusted companion? That sounds like a dog. You called me a trusted companion.
Untrusted companion? Was that?
Well, just companion.
I trust you.
Look, companion's one or two things. Either I'm a dog or I'm wiping your ass. That's what companion sounds like.
How many companions do you have that wipe your ass? We haven't had that.
Don't ask me
talk
personal
yet.
questions
Wow,
on the air.
Okay.
Don't ask me personal questions.
Well,
but
to be continued then.
no,
I'm missing out.
I'm thinking about those nursing companions. Aren't they called like compassionate companions or something like that?
I have no clue.
I
Man.
don't know.
I don't know what kind of lifestyle you're living, but I need to hear more of this.
Did I say too much?
No, not enough apparently. Anyways, I digress. So back to the topic of the day. You are listening to Dharma Time, in case you just tuned in and listened to ass wiping. But no, we are. Yeah, it's been over a week, right? Because last week we were both gone, and you had some things to do down in Miami, which looked like you had a good trip.
Yep.
And so last week no show. This week we do have one. Thank you for tuning in. If you're listening live, hi. If you're not listening live, then well, enjoy the recorded one, I guess. So today's topic, right? First of all, I got to thank my wife. Thank you for this topic, I guess. Mm-hmm. We were sitting around at the house, and she asked me a question, and it led to a discussion, which I was like, you know what? I think that's a good show topic, and so thank you for the topic. The question she asked, and was my poll question for those of you who follow me on social media. I'm at the Dharma Guy on both Instagram, and you can find me as Trinity Phillips, I believe, on Facebook. But my poll question was, would you want to know your death date? And as usual, my followers over here, as usual, my polls are always very, leaning very towards, one way or the other. It's usually not even remotely close to 50-50. Like when we're for some reason on the couch live, it's always really close to 50-50. It's kind of down the middle usually.
Right.
I think we only had one poll one time on the couch that was really lopsided. However, my listeners... Well,
the marijuana poll ended up getting lopsided because it was shared by marijuana lovers.
Yeah, but that one created a whole slew of other issues. No, as expected, my poll was very lopsided. Although I didn't know which direction it was going to go on.
Yeah.
I figured it would be lopsided somehow.
Right.
So the question once again was, would you want to know your death date? Essentially, would you want to know the date and time of your death? Prior to, obviously, not day of. And everybody said no. And some people wrote some really good responses as to why and what they were thinking.
Right.
So I'm going to ask you to get the party started here. The theme of the show today is going to be living in the now, and we're going to get further into that discussion later. But I do want to go over the poll.
Okay.
And so the poll is: would you want to know your death date?
Are you asking me?
I am asking you.
Would I want to know my death date?
Yes.
Absolutely not. There's no way.
Why?
There's no way I want to know.
I want to preface this first by saying I have my own reasons why I would not want to know it. And out of everybody I've heard so far, nobody has said what I was thinking. Okay. So I'm curious to see if you're on the same path.
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to believe that I live in the now already.
Right.
I'd like to believe that I try to live a life that is as fulfilling on a day-to-day basis. And when I say that, in not a YOLO way.
You only live once, man.
Not a YOLO way, meaning I don't try to live crazy every day.
Do the kids still say that?
But
YOLO?
I don't know.
What are the kids doing these days, kids?
But more like in a way of I want to embrace it. I want to catch as many memories because I see how short life is.
Sure.
And I'm up there in age now, man. I mean,
you are up there in age.
I'm up there. So I know that my time is getting more limited. And my family, my parents are still alive, thankfully, and so I know their time is more limited.
Right.
And my girls are older now, and so I want to embrace as much as possible. But so knowing my death date, as much as I'd like to believe that it wouldn't change the way I behave and the things that I do, I think
totally
it will.
Absolutely.
I think it will. And
in what way, though? I think that's where my
But that's where my
differs.
fear is. That's where my fear is.
Okay.
I have a fear that it would change it in a way that may not be the desired way. where I would like to believe that it would change it in a way where I would embrace it more and
I
love
think
it more.
I think you're walking down my path now.
I think it might work in an opposite direction.
Oh my gosh,
And
you're
I'm
right there with me.
And I'm afraid of that.
You were right that wow, you were the first. I'm not too surprised, I guess, but you're the first person that kind of had the same philosophy that I did.
Really?
And nobody has said this. Mind you, I had like, I don't know, close to 100 people fill out the
Right.
survey, and I've spoken verbally to numerous others.
Mm-hmm.
And you're the only one that kind of seems to be on the same wavelength that I was on. And my wavelength was, I'm
connected.
afraid I would get a case, we're on, I'll be polite to everybody, a case of the screw-its.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I would get a case of like,
Yeah.
screw it, what matters? I'm going to die soon.
Mm-hmm.
Because, realistically speaking, we all know that death is coming for us at some point. We're all
Yeah.
aware of that.
Yeah.
We all kind of do our best to live in the now and all these other wonderful phrases and whatnot. But we're all kind of hedging our bets. We're all operating under the assumption we've got many years to go.
Yeah.
So we're all trying to build a legacy, build wealth, build a future for ourselves and our kids and things of that nature.
And I've lived that way before.
Right.
I've lived thinking I'm about to die.
Right.
And I don't like the guy that I was when I was doing that.
Yeah, I think that. So for me, I think that's good or bad. I think that's how I would respond. I think I would be like, why? What's the point?
Right.
Because I know
Right.
I just got to make it to this date.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
That's
like I would do the bare minimum to make it to that date.
Right.
Because everything else would suddenly have no meaning to me.
Right.
Money, legacy, all this stuff would just suddenly lose meaning, I think, to me. I think I would kind of respond with whatever.
Yeah.
I'm going to die soon. What do you want from me? And I think that good or bad, I think that's how I would respond.
That unknown is terrifying to me because I'm not afraid of death, but I'm afraid of the internal human, the inner human that we all are,
right?
That we don't know exists. We all like to believe we're exactly who we think we are.
Exactly.
But
that
you know
ego
what?
It's telling us. Yeah.
But you know what? A broke man will tell you how horrible rich people are.
Sure.
A rich man will tell you how horrible broke people are.
Right.
But a wise man will tell you he has no idea who he really is, therefore has no comment on others. And
you went deep
that's
on us, man.
I had to. Well, this is Dharma Time, and
Right,
so that's how I feel. I feel like I want to be a wise man. I try to practice as much wisdom as I can,
Right.
which would mean I always have to check myself. I say a lot of silly things.
Sure.
But when I'm real, and you know that, we have real discussions, I try to check myself and say, you know what, in reality, I don't know how I'm going to respond.
Yeah.
I go back to the story of, for those of you who have never been shot at, I thought I would react a certain way in a shooting when
Right.
I've been shot,
Right.
when I'm the target especially.
Sure.
But even though I was holding a weapon or had possession of something, I still froze initially. Now, I responded well enough. Actually, I'm alive, so I have no bullet wounds. So I think my responses were on target. However, if you would have told me in advance, even if you have a weapon on you or with you or nearby you,
Right.
your initial response is going to be freeze like a deer, and then everything really will slow down like in the movies.
Right.
And then you'll get this hyper sense of awareness of time. So it's almost like a bee flapping its little wings. You can actually, wow. It does slow down. When your brain wants to really focus on a moment, it does slow down like that. If you'd have told me that, I would have not have believed you.
Right.
So how am I supposed to think that I'm going to know what I'm going to, how I'm going to respond to knowing my death date?
Yeah, I think that's, I think for me, anyways, because I've had plenty of near-death experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I had a gun pulled out of me when I was a kid.
Did you respond the way that you thought you would respond?
That's a good question. I was young, man. I was like in elementary school.
Okay.
And the guy pulled it out. We were across the street, or we were across the sidewalk from him. He pulled it out, pointed right at me for some reason. He pulled the trigger and it misfired. And then we all ran. Right, we all ran home, took off, and I called my mom and stuff, and so we called the police. Police came back to get him. Funny story. Police came, he was in a wheelchair. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he climbed out of his car, pointed the gun at me, pulled the trigger. It didn't fire.
Wait.
Yeah.
He was in a wheelchair, so he's
No,
disabled.
he was a disabled man, and
he climbed out of his car. That
Yeah.
probably took a little bit. He had to get the chair.
I don't know, because he was. I think he hung out of the car kind of thing. Yeah, it was weird. He had a
misfiring weapon.
Yeah, he was an old prick. But anyway, one of those get off my lawn kind of guys, right? and I'm pretty sure I had a mouth.
What a story.
But, yeah. Oh, it gets better. He pulled the gun out of me. It was all of us, but he pointed right at me. And he click, and we all ran. It scared the hell out of us. Called the police and stuff, and I guess when the cops went down to go get him, he had the gun in his lap when they showed up. So they took it from him, they arrested him, and it turns out the gun itself, you can see the thing where it hit the bullet, the pin hit the bullet, and it didn't fire. And it just so happens to be the gun that the cops like to use because it doesn't really misfire very much. But for whatever reason, that day it misfired.
Whoa.
Yeah. But to be honest with you, I didn't take it seriously. It didn't really affect. I was a kid. I was so little. I don't think it registered.
Right.
But oddly enough, as I got older and I got into doing like motorcycle racing and stunts and things of that nature, I had so many close calls, near death stuff. I'm talking about like crazy stuff. I hit a deer. I got hit by an 18-wheeler. Like,
okay.
I like to say I lost so many lives.
So let's use that.
It didn't affect me.
All right. Well, right before hitting, because you and I both been in accidents then.
Yeah.
Right, like you ever get in that wobble?
Speed wobble? Oh, yeah.
Everybody knows the wobble.
Yeah.
You're not getting out of this wobble. There's a wobble that once you hit it,
you're going down.
You have like 10 or 15 of those.
Yeah.
So it like doesn't happen right away. It goes whoa, 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 but
Yeah, you try to save it, but you're most likely going down.
So to me, that's the same. Like, I know I'm about to die. And it's like,
I had one of those moments when I hit a deer.
It's just an odd moment.
I was
so you saw the deer?
I hit the deer.
No, but I mean,
yeah, well, I was going through a turn. And it was
Mm-hmm.
at night. I was going through a turn. I was probably about a $1.10, and at
literally,
yeah,
buck.
Yeah, at that speed, you can't in the middle of a turn. You got to keep going. You got to hold your line. If you come up, you're going down. So
you're hitting a tree.
Yeah,
which
and so
is worse.
as I'm going through the turn, I can see deer coming, and I'm realizing I'm doing the math in my head. I'm like, I'm going to hit this deer, and so the deer stopped for a second, and then he finally decided to dart across. Yeah. And so when I got through the turn, I came up and I just hit the brakes, and the deer jumped right in front of me, and I heard clack, like I heard it hit, and it. Dude, it was probably, I was going 100-something miles an hour, so it had to be like a millisecond, but it felt like an eternity.
That's what I'm saying. It slows
down.
When
I heard it hit, I was like, I'm going to die right now.
Yep.
Like, this is it. You know, hitting the deer at 100 miles, you're dead.
Right.
And it turns out, when he jumped, I hit his back foot. So all it did was crack the front of my motorcycle. But I had to literally stop, pull over, like, holy cow. I almost died.
So it didn't knock you off?
No. If I would have hit it, I would have died.
God.
It hit his hoof as he was jumping. I clipped his back of his hoof. And that was one of the few times, because I had a lot of close calls with cars and things. That was one of the only times where I actually had to like get off and like, okay,
yeah,
wow.
You got to breathe.
I almost died right there.
You got to breathe.
Freaked me out a little bit. But my point, though, in making all that, though, was I've had those close calls, but I think for me, I rationalize them by saying, it almost happened, but it didn't, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So I think it would be different if I've got a legitimate death date.
Right.
Like, there is no rationalization.
Right.
There is no would be, could be. This is it.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think that's what would change it for me.
Well, especially in relationships. Think about the next fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I would use it at every fight.
I'm going to die this day.
Yeah. There's no way that I wouldn't use it fighting with Dana.
Right.
That I know I'm going to die.
That's an instant win right there.
Anyways.
Right? Yeah.
Right? Anybody that would argue with me, I would say, I'm a dead man. I got 17 more days to live, and this is the way you want to talk to me? This is the way you want to use my time?
Yeah.
So if I want to sit here and do nothing and I don't want to get dressed today,
yeah,
that's bad?
Exactly. So I think for me, I do. I really do. I think that I would no longer live in the now. I do my best to live right now, meaning I'm not worried about tomorrow and I'm not thinking about yesterday. I think that just an idea of knowing that there's a guaranteed date coming,
right?
I would start living for that date.
I would living on that date, yeah.
Like everything would revolve around that date.
Everything.
Good or bad, that's just where I would go, I believe.
Every purchase.
Yeah. Well,
every bill
I would
paid.
go crazy purchasing.
Every bill. I'd be like,
bills for
really?
What? What are you? I'm dead.
Why am I going to pay?
I would run up so much. I don't care. I'm going to die. What are you going to do? And that's what I'm saying. I would get a case of the screw-its. I really would. I'd be like, for what?
Man, I don't know. I would venture to say some people would actually commit suicide knowing their death date. I would venture to say
the anxiety would
some
get to
people
them.
suffer so greatly with dealing with their level of anxiety and depression anyway, that once they know that date, they would not be able to stop obsessing, and that obsession alone would become so annoying. Like that, inner ear.
Yeah.
You know that noise that you get sometimes, that in your inner ear?
There's a word for that.
Or like my laugh?
Yeah, I think people would obsess over it. I think it would drive them absolutely bonkers, man.
Yeah.
I think there's some who already obsess about it.
Right.
When you have a confirmed date, I can't imagine. Yeah, that would freak me out, I think.
Were you thinking about tinnitus? Is that what
Yeah,
you said?
that's what it is. The little ringing. Anyways, it's funny that you brought up the whole anxiety thing, though, right? Because that's one of the things that I was going to talk, at least bears mentioning when it comes to living in the now.
Yeah.
And there's a multitude of ways we could take this, but one of the things that does stick out in my head is the whole idea that, if you're angry, it's typically thinking about the past, and if you're anxious, it's typically thinking about the future.
Right.
Those are the definition of not being in the now.
Right.
So I guess, we need to define really what is living in the now. Like, what does that mean? Because I think people talk about that. And I know
both sides talk about it, though.
What do
So
you mean?
the healthiest living side talks about it, and the destructive side talks about it. So healthy living people say living in the now. Destructive side, risk takers use YOLO.
Yeah.
You only live once.
Yeah.
So the same concept is taken very different ways. That's why I differentiated it earlier.
Sure.
Because when I say I like to live in the now, but not in a YOLO sort of way, meaning.
Right.
Like, I don't think, oh, well, why not do all these drugs, and why not do all this risky behavior, and why not, live like you're dying in this way? Because that's not living like you're dying. That's living like life is not important. I think there's a difference between living like you're dying and living as if life has no meaning.
Yeah, I can see that. I think as I've aged, like when I had my kids, I got rid of the motorcycle. I stopped taking those kind of risks.
Correct.
And I did that. I justified. Dude, I had so many of those conversations with people I knew that were older than me.
Right.
For those of you who didn't know me, I used to do stupid stuff, man. I mean, I'm going through traffic. I got my motorcycle up to over 200 miles an hour, doing wheelies, endos, racing, that kind of stuff, dragging knee, everything. And I would always justify it to people who would be worried.
Right.
I'd be like, man, I'm going to die someday anyways, man. I really have fun, that kind of stuff.
Right.
But yeah, I believe it's a little bit different now.
Yeah, now it's about eating bad food, and you go, well, I'm going to die anyway.
Right.
Isn't that weird? Risky behavior now for
changes,
me
yeah,
is eating red
exactly.
sauce.
It's a different risk.
Is eating red meat as often as I do.
Right.
That's as risky as my behavior at 48.
But I do notice as I got older with kids, I agree that each moment is more precious to me.
Oh, yeah.
Like I pay attention to, like you said, memories and conversations
sure.
and experiences. They all mean so much more to me because life goes fast. I mean my youngest just turned 7, for God's sakes. And like so it happens very, very quickly. So where I'm at now, I agree. I'm less apt to take risks, not because I'm not living for the now, but because I don't want it to end right now.
Right.
I want to save it, as long as I can. But I do believe that there are a lot of people who struggle with that concept, though. There's a lot of people who struggle with the anxiety or anger.
Well,
being, and once again, anger is just all about what happened.
Right.
What just did happen or what happened previously. You're angry because it didn't meet your expectations. You had these idea of what it should have been, and didn't do that, and you just can't accept that fact, and so you're angry about it, and you're stewing and you're suffering, kids. That's what it's called. And that, so anytime you're angry, that's where that's coming from. It's your inability to accept what happened. And then the anxious part is you're obsessing over tomorrow.
Right.
Not necessarily tomorrow, but the next 5 minutes. What's going to happen? This narrative that you've already kind of created in your mind, that's where the anxiety comes into play, with your uneasiness of, am I right? Am I wrong? Is this going to happen? Is this not going to happen? And both of those, to me, are the opposite of living in the now.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now is all you got. Tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
And so to me, I think that's kind of what living in the now means, is taking the moments as they come, appreciating where you're currently at.
Right.
Does that kind of coincide with what you're getting at, or no?
I think everything so far you said is something that I can agree with, and I do agree with. I think that when you say, again, living in the now, I think part of that is taking a hell of a lot of snapshots, in my head, because I know how much I've forgotten. And I think sometimes that bothers me, actually, because that I have a very poor memory. In other words, I have a short-term memory loss issue. So I have a very poor short-term memory. I have very good long-term memory. So if it doesn't somehow become a long-term memory,
you're gonna forget it.
I'm gonna forget it.
Right.
And so I literally sometimes experience moments, and I could feel emotion. I could feel an emotion knowing I'm gonna lose this moment. I'm not going to remember
sucks. Yeah.
And it does bother me.
Yeah, that sucks.
Because I know that I'm not going to have it to have again.
Yeah, that would suck.
And so there's so many of those. I mean, I could feel emotion right now thinking about it, because as a father to two daughters that are beautiful young daughters, and I have a great wife, to know that there's so many memories that they have that I don't have. So they'll be talking about something, or Dana will be talking, and I can't grab it. I can't, you know what I mean? Or I just barely grasp it. Or they'll say, "You were there, Dad," and I was like, "I was there."
Yeah.
And just to
I have
know
a few of those, and it sucks.
That's a horrible feeling.
Yeah, I have a few of those, and it sucks. I think you kind of hit on the head, really, with my kids. Because it does go so fast. Because you blink and they're grown, and it's like, oh my gosh, and it does break my heart a little bit too sometimes. Like, my daughter will come up and she'll things that mean so much to her, or my son, they'll come to me and they'll be talking. Remember when such and such, and I don't remember anything that they're talking about, because for them it was such an important moment, and for me it was just a blip on my day.
Right. And then you remember some ridiculous thing for who knows what reason.
Yeah.
You remember something that was just ridiculous.
Yeah. Those do bother me for sure. But I think it's in those moments, though, that just remind me how precious it is.
Yeah.
And so that's why the next moment, I say to myself, in that moment, this is one of those moments.
And that's what I'm saying. I don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
Because it's happened.
Yeah.
So when I'm experiencing, for instance, and this is hard to admit, but I can't visually. I would be lying if I said I could visually see when Dahlia and Zoe started walking. I can't visualize it, and that bothers me. You know what I mean? Because that's really horrible to be able to say as a father. I feel like a bad father by even saying I can't even remember that. But so those moments are still happening, right? So now, with their first boyfriend and some of the firsts that I'm watching them go through, I am literally working very hard to embrace it differently, because as much as I thought I was embracing that moment, whatever was happening in my life at the time,
it superseded it.
You
didn't want it to, but it did. Yeah.
And I didn't want it to.
Yeah.
If you would have asked me, do you want to remember this, or do you want to remember this? I would tell you I want to remember that. Yeah. But for some reason, that's not how it got. That's not how it got.
Well,
stuck
I
in
think
my
it's
head.
important to understand too, though. We as people, man, it's just human nature to an extent to obsess about the future or struggle with the past.
Right.
So by no means would I say, this isn't a. This is why it's a philosophy, not a commandment. Right? Like, it's impossible to do 24/7. As much as I like to sit here and tell you that I do this all the time, constantly, I'm still a human being, man. So there's still moments that kind of slide by me, and that's where the acceptance comes into play.
Right.
I have to accept that's what it was.
Right.
But that is what reminds me, like you said, on a daily basis, to make sure each moment coming, that's my aim. That's not always the result.
Right.
But that is my aim. That's what I set out to do every single time. And sometimes I'm more skillful than others. Sometimes I'm able to successfully make that in a moment, and I walk back and I'm very pleased with myself. And I can see it in my kids' eyes when they know that Daddy really listened that time.
Right on.
And then there's other moments when it doesn't happen, and I have to catch it and say, I get disappointed in that. And I don't wear myself down and be all, I'm a horrible father and stuff. I try to be like, okay, that just means next moment I'm going to make it that much more special.
That's what
I just try to continue on that. And I try to make more ups and downs. Right. I try to make more successes than failures, basically.
I think that's why I like to capture so much on video, in film, and pictures.
Yeah.
I think in sound, because my memory is triggered that way. So I feel I always have this vision every time I take pictures. Like, if you watch like home movies and stuff of us, I'll always be talking to the older them or the older me, because I have this vision that I'm going to be sitting there, wherever they wheel me and stick me, and hopefully I could just watch all these old things and just kind of relive it that way, and just kind of enjoy how life was, because I'm not going to remember it just organically, but I hope that with watching it, I'll be able to enjoy it all over again.
I've had those moments. Like you were talking about the kids walking and stuff. I was able to capture some of those. Yeah. And some of them I do forget. Like, I can't remember. But then I'll not a shameless plug here, I guess, for Facebook, but some of the Facebook memories will pop up, and I'll see a video of like my kids when they're just like itty bitty. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so cool.
Thanks to Mark Zuckerberg for what he did, because I think he him and everybody else that ever invented or created a social media platform, those of us that engaged in that have now been programmed to capture our life much more frequently. And so it gives us a wealth of memories that we would not have had.
Yeah, well, and good and bad, right? Like,
Good and
because
bad.
I've seen so
Good and
many
bad.
people who, I've seen a bunch of illustrations, right, where the people are sitting there watching this amazing thing happen
Right.
through their phones as
Right.
opposed to like watching it.
That I don't like to do.
So I try to do my best. Matter of fact, we just went
That-
to we had I call it a recital, but it was like a program or something
Right.
for our 13-year-old, and I was able to capture the video, but I purposely held it down so I could watch it with my own eyes.
that's
I
the
didn't
way I
watch
do it.
through the screen.
That's the way I do it. I kind of I keep looking back at it.
Yeah, I make sure it's appropriate, like
Right.
centered.
But
and
I wanna
and
watch it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to remember this.
right.
I'm going to remember that.
Right.
So I do my
I can
best
watch it
to
like this later.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would I watch it like this
Exactly.
now?
So, but I look around and I see a ton of people all watching it through their
Yeah,
phones or
yeah.
iPads
It's
or
sad.
whatever they're using.
Sad.
But the other thing that I think that living in the now really kind of comes into play, not just with life in general,
Right.
but I see it a lot in relationships. Right? How many times has somebody got into a relationship and brought baggage with them, brought expectations or a jaded sense of being into that new relationship?
Because they're living in the past.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or how many times has a relationship been ruined because of both, living in the past and anxious for the future? Like, I'm worried that
Right.
you're going to do something
Oh, yeah.
that has happened to me in the past, or I'm going to punish you now, or I'm going to build all these walls, not letting you in because of that. It happens. Oh gosh, I mean, name one person that's never happened to. I mean, I think
Right.
we're all on some level guilty of it in some form or fashion.
Right.
I think some of us are able to skillfully navigate that to where maybe it doesn't affect us as much, or we're able to maintain a healthy relationship with somebody as we break those walls down. But not everybody's so skillful, though. I mean, I see it happen constantly, especially in the addiction world, right? I mean, how many times have we been in a group and somebody's, upset or reliving something that's happened
Right.
however long ago?
Right. Or a past relapse and just
Yeah.
saying, well, I know I'm going to relapse again. You're setting, there is such thing as setting yourself up to fail. And if you project something and visualize something, if you should believe in visualization because it's actually true. If you visualize a ball going in, it goes in a lot more than it goes out if you visualize it. But I can guarantee you, every time I visualized I was about to miss the shot, I missed a shot.
Yeah, right.
I mean, almost 100% of the time, I would say that if I thought right before I was about to strike, whether it be a golf ball, basketball, football, anything that I did, if I visualized at that moment, it's going to go left or right, or it better not go left, it better not go right, it went left or right. It did exactly what my fear was or what I was projecting.
Yeah.
So why would we not believe that's a
Well, it
good...
affects your effort and everything, man.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor for life. In other words, if I visualize it's going to go negative, I'm not a relationship person, that person always cheats on me, or I always end up cheating, or then that's probably exactly what's going to happen.
And that's why, dude, like on Facebook even, I'm notorious now at this point where I see people commenting. I have a lot of people on my pages who will make these sorts of comments about, are there no good men left, or where are all the women at? And so I always do my best to take that as an opportunity to just remind them to stop looking for the right person, but spend your time being the right person. And the problem with that is I don't think anybody really understands what I mean by that.
Right.
And what I do mean by that is getting rid of some of those walls,
Right.
getting rid of some of those barriers, getting rid of that those narratives that you fill in, like everybody's going to do this, or this happened to me in the past, so I'm never going to let it happen again, and that kind of stuff. I think that like, for instance, if something happened to you in the past, this idea that I'm going to never let it happen to me in the future, so I'm going to actively do certain things.
Right.
You got to trust that you're a different person now, and it's just not going to happen.
Right.
Right. And number one, number two, you can't control somebody else's behavior. It's never going to happen. Like, there's nothing you can do or say that's going to make somebody else behave a certain kind of way.
Right.
So all you can do is be the kind of person that behaves in a way that provides value. Number one. And number two, behave in a way to where you won't find certain things acceptable anymore.
Right.
And you'll respond the way you need to respond. But this idea that you can get rid of hurt, I mean, that's the first truth, guys. Like,
Right.
you're never going to get rid of hurt in your life. I hate to be the bearer of bad news. No matter how many bad relationships you've been through, no matter how many bad experiences you've gone through, no matter how much knowledge you've gained in your life, and I've spoken to some very knowledgeable people in my life, you're never going to get rid of the next hurt.
Right.
It's always going to happen. But what that knowledge does is allow you to cope with that hurt better than you did before, in a more skillful way, in a more useful way. Because I get hurt constantly. I'm a human being. We all do. But the hurt me today responds differently than the hurt me of like 10 years ago. And I think that's where it comes from.
I think what you're talking about today is real powerful for all the people out there that are single, because I think that they take they tend to get into levels of anxiety and depression a lot more than most.
Yeah.
If they've had bad relationships.
Yeah.
They tend to give up on life. But this, when they say married people live longer, it's because there's not that additional sense of, oh my God, you know what I mean? I'm not worthy.
Married women
are
live
worthy.
longer because we die earlier.
Not in my family. We kill our women. No, all the men live longer.
God.
Anyway, no, I'm kidding. But I guess what it's like. And I'm not a fisherman, but for some reason I use this kind of analogy. Like
right,
you don't
roll with it.
You don't catch catfish with bass fishing. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so a lot of people would be like, oh, the ones that you were talking about, that there's no good men in the world, or where are the good women at, or whatever. Yeah. But it's like, have you ever thought about the bait you're fishing with? This is your bait.
Yeah.
This is how you're projecting to the world. This is how you're giving it out. So are you really being true to who you are? Because if this is the kind of person you're catching, there's something that you have to take ownership on. I'm not saying it's your fault that people are jerks or they're cheaters or whatever, but there's something that at least you can work on about yourself, whether it be ignoring little signs early on, having a second conversation when maybe the first conversation kind of showed you everything. Sure. Maybe you are too trusting to certain types of personality types, or maybe what you find attractive short term is not what you're saying you want long term.
Yeah.
And sometimes those are very different.
That's usually the path I take when I had that conversation. One of the biggest paths I take is I try to get people to ask themselves why. Why do you find that person attractive? What about them? Mm-hmm. And it's not always just a physical beauty thing. What about that person? Because there's lots of beautiful people in the world.
Right.
What about that person? There's a room full of 100 people. Why that one person that are you attracted to? Right. And I think that's something a lot of people don't ask. Why? Why do I find that attractive? And I think that I'm dealing with that now. With my 13-year-old, for instance. Mm-hmm. The other day she posted something on our Instagram that kind of didn't sit well with us at the house, and we had to correct her about it a little bit. And what I'm trying to get her to understand at this age is to set up a value system that's going to benefit you. Right. The things that you value might not necessarily be good for you long term, like you said. And I think that not enough people do that when trying to start a relationship, for instance. There's been plenty of people in my past that liked me back in the day, mainly because I fit the mold of the bad boy.
Right.
Tattoos, motorcycle riding, running from cops and everything else.
That's what they wanted.
Yeah, it was the bad boy image. And a lot of women that I've met in my life like that kind of persona.
Right.
But the problem is, what you're valuing about that person isn't necessarily conducive to long-term commitment. Yeah. The whole point of that bad boy image is rebellious, against the rules, can't hold me down. Nothing about that says commitment and long-term relationship. Right. And this idea that you can change this person, no, you can't. Nobody changed me. My wife didn't change me. I was never going to get married. What happened was my wife just provided value to me that I saw. And I was like, wow, like that's different. And it wasn't even just her. Because I've met women in my past that were great women. A lot of women I know that I've interacted with are still on my Facebook. We're friends to this day. Right. But I wasn't ready to do it at that point. It had nothing to do with them or the value that they brought to the table. My wife just brought the value at the right time, and I was ready to see it at the right time. But I also changed what I was looking for, and I think that's something that people have to kind of keep in mind on. And that's kind of the opposite, I guess, of living in the now.
Right.
But at the same token, you can't let the walls that you built up not see a potential future. Right. If that makes sense.
Well, the thing is that there's a lot of people that are very wounded, looking for someone to heal those wounds, or they feel like they're healers and they're looking for wounded animals and they want to save them.
Captain Save-A-Ho.
Yeah,
that was where I was, man.
I think that's an issue. Dana's the first woman I went out with that didn't have daddy issues. Right. The women that liked.
Are you
guys,
serious?
Yeah, all the women.
She's like a unicorn, dude. I've never met a woman without daddy issues.
All the women had daddy issues that I went out with. So yeah, I used to think all women had daddy issues because those are the ones that were.
I'm sure there's some out there that don't. I just never met too many of them.
I met that mold, right? That was that guy with women with daddy issues.
And for disclaimer, for transparent, I have daddy issues as well. So I mean,
right. Well, so you would have been attracted to me then.
Probably.
Yeah.
I am, man.
Very good. And
I like the beard you got going on, man.
And you're a big muscular guy, so what's not to like? If we were in jail together, I'd want you as my Sally.
I think I'm the bear. I think that's what they call me.
I'd want you as my Sally. But anyway.
Oh my God, this went way wrong.
If I was doing life.
Sure. Yeah. If you knew your death date, right? Like that's a prerequisite right there.
Anyway. So when you talk about living in the now, I also think about how with those relationships that we had, I think what's important is to, make sure you resolve things. I think a way to enjoy a better future.
Oh, yeah.
And this is also one of my fears. But I don't want regrets. I really don't want regrets. When I've counseled older people, what Trinity was showing me is because this is radio. The tattoo of no regrets on his forearm, on his left forearm. Exactly, because when I've counseled people of elder ages, plus when I got clean and sober, when I went out to L.A. and that's where I got clean and sober, and I'd walk the streets and talk to all the street people, the people that lived on the streets, the homeless people.
Right.
I would talk to older street people, older people on in Hollywood
Sure.
and in Venice, and it was they never said I wish I would have bought that Mercedes Benz. It was always about how they were with some person that they regretted. Their mother, their child. Most of it was children. Most of it was, that they weren't there to watch their child, or they felt like I can't go back home because I couldn't let my daughter see the way I turned out.
Right.
So it's better for her to think that I'm dead. Weird things like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, I've never heard anybody
It's such
say
a horrible sense of regret.
I never heard anybody say I regret not working more, or
Right.
I regret not paying more bills or something like that. It's always some sort of a
Time.
relationship or time.
Yeah, it's some
Absolutely.
sort of time. It's admiration of time. This time is going, so you're saying, would you want to know your death date, living in the now? I'm thinking about, well, if that time is, we already know that clock is ticking.
That's the thing, right? We all know it.
So
yeah.
you don't need to have a specific date. You should already live in a way that you find impactful not only to others but to yourself. I want to, if you're enjoying your life, trust me, and I love you, and you're around me, and you're my brother, my mother, my sister, my family member. If you're enjoying your life and it's impactful to you, it's impactful to me.
Well, and that actually reminds me of the last thing I have actually written here. It's a nice little segue.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is the other thing that I think living in it now kind of needs to be brought up, if you will, is taking advantage of opportunities. I think that's another thing I see a lot. I'm not really guilty of it much myself in the business world.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm definitely guilty of it in certain aspects of my life.
Right.
Less so than maybe some others. I've always been more of a risk taker, if you will.
Yeah.
But I see it a lot with friends and family, where like an amazing opportunity will show up,
Right.
and they won't take it.
Yeah.
Because they're worried about what could be.
Yeah.
Right. Maybe it doesn't go good, or maybe this happens, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to do my best, and we've had this conversation numerous times. I think that's one of the reasons why we get along so well, and why some of our board members hate us, is because we've
They
never
hate us? Don't say that. Don't.
we've never seen an opportunity that we're like, no, I don't want to do that. An
No,
opportunity,
we make them laugh.
yeah, an opportunity shows up. We're like, all right, yeah,
We
let's do it.
entertain them.
Let's figure out how to do it, right?
Right.
What was it? I used to say this phrase, "I'm not turning anything down but my collar," kind of a thing.
Right.
And I think that everybody
we're not
has
building resumes. we're building. We're living legacy, man. You
Yeah,
and I live
trying.
legacy, and what I mean by that is we truly understand we're just a link in the chain.
Yeah.
And so we're going to be the best darn link in that chain that we can possibly be,
Yeah, man.
because we know we're just a grain in the sand here.
I'm just written
That's
time.
it.
That's all I'm doing.
That's it.
And so my thing is, say yes. Learn to say yes more. I
Yes.
think for a lot of
Oh,
people.
you sound like Tony Robbins now.
Oh,
yes.
do I? Oh, nice.
Yes.
Should I go insult somebody now and come up with an apology afterwards too? But I think people need to say yes more. I really do believe that part of living in the now is accept an opportunity in front of you.
Mhm.
It's here in front of you right now. Say yes.
Yeah.
Stop worrying about what could be. Stop worrying about the future so much, because it might not be here,
Right.
guys. You don't know your death date, which is good in the sense of you don't know, but it could be bad in the sense it could be tomorrow.
Right.
It really seriously could. We don't know that. I've never met anybody in my life that wakes up and calls me and says, "Hey guys, I'm driving into work and I'm going to go ahead and die today."
Mm-hmm.
No. But yet there's how many thousands of people die of car accidents every day?
We know what's happening right now.
Yes.
While we've done this show, there's been people that have received that phone call,
Absolutely.
and that's a horrible phone
It's a
call.
horrible phone call. Having said that, tomorrow's not promised.
Right.
So learn to say yes more to sometimes. Learn to say yes. Learn to grasp an opportunity, especially if you've been working for it.
Right.
That's just something I've seen a lot. Is a lot of times people are afraid to be successful.
Right.
Like they work their whole lives, and I was kind of guilty of that when I was younger.
Right.
I was so used to struggling that I was just comfortable struggling, and so when opportunities would come, I would be worried about the opportunities because my identity was like surrounded by struggling. I grew up struggling.
Right.
It's just kind of what I was just used to being a fighter.
Yeah.
And so it's hard to fight when you have what you need. Right? You got to fight to keep it, I guess. But
and it bonds you to other strugglers.
Yeah.
You know, unfortunately, in that
Absolutely.
in that analogy or that reality, when you're bonded by your struggles, unfortunately, it's really hard to grow or develop where you want to go, because not only are you rolling the dice for yourself, which is already hard to not crap out, right?
Yeah.
But now that means your circle of influence also has to not crap out.
Yeah.
For you to live a good life.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying don't hang around other strugglers, but it's hang around or try to be around as many people who inspire you differently. You know, it's like you don't ever want to be the richest guy at the party, and you don't ever want to have the biggest house in the neighborhood, because then nobody's house is helping your house get more value.
There you
know what I mean? I like to hang around people that are smarter than me. I like to hang around people that are more successful than I am. It inspires me differently. So that's why I think that's why you and I get along so well. I think we look at each other's positive qualities, and it inspires us.
Right.
And so that's why we become a good team. Because there's things about you that I find, things that I don't have and that I wish to have. And I think that we share that equally. So I think that by doing that, we're constantly challenged. And I think that if you're out there living, one thing is to appreciate your life and to enjoy the now. But the other thing is to become complacent and therefore stop moving and stop growing. I want to make this point because I know you have other points that you want to make, but you posted, or I don't know if you posted or just showed me a picture. With Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali.
Oh, I sent you. I saw there was a T-shirt that was floating around, and I was like, I saw that T-shirt. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
Two people that I think really define this topic today: Bruce Lee and Muhammad Ali. Bruce Lee with the everything is water, water.
Love that.
Right?
Love that one.
I love that too, and that was another cool thing. We tend to love a lot of the same things. Or analogies.
That interview with his, that was an amazing interview.
So in even though Muhammad Ali never said it, he came off with a very different personality and attitude,
right.
And you may not like his religious beliefs or his faith or whatever.
Sure.
However, if you watch his boxing style, he's very much in the now, and he's very fluid like water because he would move so often. He didn't just sit there and be like,
he invented the rope-a-dope.
Exactly. So he was fluid. And so we see successful people be able to be fluid, move with the time. In other words, if right now these are the barriers that exist, instead of being frustrated with those barriers, learn how to coexist with those barriers, knowing that those barriers are not going to be there tomorrow if I continue to find a way to seep out of here. Because water will always find a way to leak out.
Oh, yeah.
And if it can't find a way to leak out, it'll evaporate.
Yeah, or it'll crash.
It'll crash. It'll ice up. It'll smoke up. It will, like I said, evaporate. It will melt. It will do something. It's always finding a way to meander. And you can watch these big rocks in Arizona and all that. These big, and you see, man, this river has actually marked this rock over and over again and changed the way that rock is, one little grain of rock at a time, or pebble of sand at a time.
That's actually Jeet Kune Do, which was the martial art that Bruce Lee kind of formed, if you will. That was actually one of the main components of it, was you're supposed to strike with whatever's closest to your target.
Right.
So your target is going to basically decide for you what you hit them with. That was always the thing of it. So, and that right there reminds me of what Mike Tyson used to say, was everybody's got a plan until you get hit in the face.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
And so it's like, if you're going to, because I've been in fights before in my life, and I got to tell you, prior to fights, I've choreographed the most amazing battle scene you've ever seen in your life, where I'm doing like double flip, kick, flying, like, Billy Jack type stuff. And it never ends up that way.
Right. That's why those guys that tell those stories of fights, and the way they tell it sounds like a movie fight, I'm thinking, brother, no, it didn't. Because that's the way it looked to you, or felt to you. But to us, you were just doing this. Because I've seen so many fights that look sloppy.
And so that's kind of, indicative, like you said, of being in the now, being in the moment, and just I'm going to let the situation dictate to me how I, respond. Right. And I think to me that's the word I like to use these days, is respond. Right. As opposed to react. React is more of an emotional thing. Response is more of a thought out. And I think that we do need to get better as a society of responding to things as opposed to reacting. There's an awful lot of reaction happening these days, and not enough response.
And use the Earth's energy to do it. Like Aikido is another form of martial arts where you actually use the energy of the other. Use their energy against them.
The harder you come at me, the harder you're about to fall.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
that's also a way to live. In other words, look, you want to deal with life, practice some martial arts, and you'll learn a lot of philosophy.
No, I agree. And of course, meditation is a huge one. There's in Buddhism, one of the things they like to say is if you're not paying attention to your breath, you're not in the moment, because you're always breathing.
Right.
So if you're not always aware of it,
you just made me focus on it. See,
there
every
you
time
go.
someone says that, I sit here and focus, because when you hold we hold our breaths way too often.
Sure.
And when you hold your breath, you actually think less clear. There's actually proof.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's actually research
You heard it here
that shows,
first, kids.
Yeah, there's proof that shows that
hopefully.
when you breathe, the more you breathe, the more clarity your brain gets.
I can imagine that.
It's all lit up, but when you hold your breath, it's not lit up, and in certain parts of your brain are not turned on. So breathing actually allows you to think clearly, and that's why in athletics and all that stuff, it's you always practice breathing.
In my other life as a fitness individual, I am fully aware of the fact that when you're lifting, you're actually not supposed to. It's called the Valsalva maneuver. You're not really supposed to hold your breath. You're supposed to breathe breathe in during the eccentric part and breathe out during the concentric part.
Exactly.
To help
For
keep
different reasons. but
oxygen
yes.
to your muscles, things
There
of
you
that
go.
nature. Yep.
See, breathing is necessary
Breathe,
to live.
baby, breathe.
Maybe that's breathing is necessary.
Yeah.
That's why that song is so good.
Which song is that?
Breathe. It's actually
Just Breathe?
It's a chick song, but I love it.
Right
Breathe.
on. We're getting very chicky today.
Getting chicky with it.
Get in touch with your chick
No,
side.
no.
Wow, you really went there. Okay. So I guess the living in the now. I think people underestimate how important it is, and I think people I think all of us, in a roundabout way, I think we all want to do that. I think we all strive for that, but I think sometimes we kind of get off that path a little bit, and so I think it's important for us to be aware of that, be cognizant of when you're off that path.
Right.
And anytime you're having angry or you're frustrated about something, you're not in the now. You're about something that happened before. And anytime you're stressing over something, you're worried about something, you're playing out the story in your head, you're not in the now. You're in the future.
Right.
You're filling in a narrative.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good rule of thumb. Is whenever you're experiencing those two emotions, that's the definition of not being in the now. We only have a few minutes left, but before I get to my top three, we did come up with a subject that I think we should touch on briefly.
Because we disagreed?
Well, I don't know if we disagree or not.
Oh,
we didn't
okay.
get far enough into it because you
That's
said
true.
you wanted to wait.
That's true.
There was we watched my wife and I watched the second season of 13 Reasons Why, and of course so the topic of suicide came up, and her and I were discussing it, and one of the things that was said was that something about suicide and living in the now essentially, and what I said was, not always, of course. There's outliers and everything else, but I would assume, I've never been suicidal myself, but I would say that my assumption would be suicidal tendencies typically revolve around something in the past or something in the future, meaning something that you went through that you might still be dealing with, but it was an event that took place already, and you can't cope with it, or you can't let it go, or whatever it may be, or frustration, worry, stress, anxiety about something that's going to happen or might happen. And so to me, one of the things I said was about suicide itself isn't about the now. It's about what did or is going to happen. Okay. So the thing to remember with that is right now you're okay.
So
So
trauma,
this
and
is-
resentment, or fear and anxiety.
Typically, yeah.
Kind of.
That would be my assumption. I'm sure there's other reasons, and don't write me if there is. But
where I initially said, okay, well, it sounds like we're going to disagree on here. You're saying that you're fine right now.
yeah,
Right? What happened?
my thing's yelling at me, telling me we have a little power. What I'm saying is when I say fine,
Right.
Let me preface this.
Effed up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
What I'm saying about fine
that's
is
what we say in the industry.
I'm not saying fine in a sense of mentally you're firing on all cylinders and you're happy-go-lucky right now.
Okay.
What I'm saying is fine is you're out of harm's way. You're, physically you're okay right now. You're in the eye of the storm, if you will. It might be stormy outside, but right here, right now, you're okay.
Right.
And that's what we like to. Well, that's what I try to focus on. Is right now you're okay.
Right.
I can't help. Yesterday's gone, and tomorrow's not here yet. Right now you're okay. Let's build on that.
So define okay, because if right now
You're safe.
someone is sitting there,
I'm gonna say you're safe. And because the turmoil, see, I'm philosophically speaking, the turmoil that's going on in their brain already happened. They're still just replaying it over and over and over. Unless, of course, you're in the middle of like an assault right now or something.
I'd like to say that there's probably and I don't know the numbers, but I'm sure that a great amount of suicide out there is due to something that's only now, but it wasn't back then. Back then was good, and maybe that's why you're comparing it. That right now is so horrible, and back then it was so nice. I wish I had those days back. I wish I had my wife back. I wish I had my kids back. I wish I had whatever back.
Right.
And so you're glorifying the past so much that today looks horrible.
Right.
And the future looks abysmal because I can't imagine a life without.
Right.
And I'm thinking about the suicides of those that are suffering right now.
Right.
And the reason they're suffering right now is because of loss.
Sure.
That kind of that kind of suicide.
Yeah.
The because of loss and because of something that's happening now, whether it be a divorce, a death of somebody close to them, a loss of a child. Which I couldn't imagine not feeling suicidal after a death of a child. I would think that everybody that would lose a child would unfortunately be going through that.
Would think about it at least.
And I want to hug every single one of them.
Absolutely.
Because that has to be the most horrific loss.
Yeah, that would be the one that would affect me the most.
So that's why I disagreed.
Well, only reason why I would say, but even if
because
you're dealing,
when you said I'm fine now, well, I'm not fine now. Right now, I'm actually in a cave.
What I mean by fine is you are physically fine. Is what I was talking about. Like, once again, I'm bringing in.
It's not the physical that's going to cause me to kill myself.
I agree.
It's that psychological crap.
And part of that psychological crap is not letting go of the past. And so that's where the philosophy of Buddhism is coming into play. Is our clinging to the past, or our clinging to the future, or our clinging to this positive idea is what's causing the suffering. So, meaning, like, here's an example, and we're running out of time. I should have brought this up earlier.
You should have.
An example I'll bring up is if, you know, like you said, it's easy to come home and complain about all these things that somebody may have lost or whatever, right? And complain and just talk about how bad your life is. So picture to somebody who and I'm not trying to trivialize anybody's issues or problems here in any way, shape, or form. I'm just trying to give a philosophical perspective on it, a Buddhist philosophy, if you will. So, you know, that person who comes home, you know, leaves their job, gets in their car, drives home to their house, comes in the house, turns on their TV or whatever, and is sitting there and upset that all these things that they've lost. They still have a job. They still had a car to come home. They still had a home to come to. There's people out there who don't have that. There's people out there who, you know, there's always that guy, right? It's always saying, hey, well, somebody has it worse kind of a thing. Right. But there's always that one person who's just, wow, you probably have it worse.
Yeah,
you know?
There's somebody out there.
There's
really
one person out there, I'm sure, that everybody's referring to. So my point is, I'm not trying to trivialize or belittle it, but it could have been worse. It could have been better. But right now, you're still alive. You have your health. You have, you know, you have.
Well, you might not have your health, though. That's what I'm saying. You're assuming that
those people, and those ones would be the hardest ones to have that interaction with, for sure.
Yeah, you really have to tailor that conversation depending on the person.
It's a hard conversation.
It's a hard
Let's
conversation.
Just be honest.
You know, what is the Buddhist equivalent? Because I know you're short on time.
Yeah.
What is the Buddhist equivalent to this too shall pass then?
Accept things for what they are. Accept them for what they are, not what they want. What you want them to be.
So maybe that's the real
acceptance.
That's the real crux.
It would be and part of that would be the second truth,
right.
In the sense of, you know, you cause your suffering through clinging or aversion. Sure. Trying to avoid stuff or trying to cling to stuff is what's causing your suffering. Accepting it for what it is, and that's what I meant by you're okay.
Okay.
It's a hard one, I know, and that's why this philosophy.
One will have to be continued.
That's why this philosophy is simple, but it's not easy. And having said that, I got to get these three things out of the way.
You better get those three things out.
I do.
And I better get set up over here.
Somebody's trying to live in the now, and you hear that, and you're like, okay, I want to do that. How do I do that? So I got to run through them really quickly. The first one is let go. You got to let go of the past. Let it be what it is. It's in the past for a reason. It's gone. Let go. Accept it for what it was, not what you want it to be. So let the past go. Let the anger go. Let the frustration, things of that nature. The second one is trust. Trust that the future is going to be okay. It's going to work out. It might not work out the way you think it should, but it will work out. That's the funny thing about life, is it keeps going whether you want it to or not. Life continues to move on regardless. You know, we do that on our daily lives. If you're at night and you're driving, your headlights don't light up the entire road. They light up like 4 or 5 feet in front of you, and you're trusting that there's a road that continues after that 5 feet.
Yeah.
You know, same thing with life. Life is going to keep going on. It will be okay. Your definition of okay might have to change, though. And then the third one is, remember, everything is impermanent. No matter what it is, good or bad, it's not going to last forever. So accept it for while it's here, appreciate it and enjoy it, and when it's gone, let it go and move on to the next one. Special quick thanks to our sponsors. We have Retreat Premier Addiction Treatment Centers, Journey Pure, Orange County, and of course the Now Matters More Foundation. Go to nowmattersmore.org to check us out. Got some really big stuff coming up, some partnerships with NASCAR, and we got the hunt coming back as well. Got some really cool things, so stay tuned to that. And now that you know better, do better. Peace.
I think he plans it all out. Or just makes it up as he goes along.
Human knowledge belongs to the world.